Zach Seiler had it all. A fresh Stanford MBA with a concentration in business ethics, a one-bedroom apartment in a luxury high-rise with ocean views, and a closet full of branded fleeced vests. And he's filing his taxes with the most popular software on the market, TurboTax. TurboTax was his dream girl. His dream tax preparation service. A super sexy user interface, guidance on all of the hottest deductions, and it was free. It was true love. Zach finished his taxes and clicked submit. That was easy. Wait, what the fuck? $129 service fee to file? It was supposed to be free. He looked for help, no number to call, maybe the chatbot? But after several frustrating attempts to phrase his question with a maddening level of precision, he slammed his laptop shut. This was supposed to be free and easy. His heart sank. He was feeling taken advantage of, lied to. There's a word for this, he thought. His college girlfriend used it once. Was he being gaslit? He pulled out his phone and opened Reddit, where he spilled his heart in the Ask Bros forum. Dudes, listen up. TurboTax is low-key shady AF. I've been crushing it in the finance game for a hot minute, and I thought I had my tax game dialed in. But now I feel like I'm being played hardcore. And it kind of feels bad. My guys, can you relate? Zach felt the warmth of the incoming virtual bro hug begin to mend his broken heart. Buddy, TurboTax is a 2 at best. And don't even get me started on their lobbying efforts. Super sauce. Couldn't agree with you more, brosif. But you know who has a crazy glow up? The IRS. Bro, I've been telling everyone how rad the IRS is. You can file for free on their website. It's totally user-friendly. And it's kind of hot, not gonna lie. The IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, was kind of hot? Maybe his dream tax preparation service had been right in front of him the whole time. All they had to do was take off their glasses, let down their hair, and get out from under the thumb of Washington lobbyists, and they were a certified smoke show. Go Gaslight, Girlboss, and Gatekeep somewhere else, TurboTax. It's finally time for the IRS to have her prom queen moment. This is the Corporate Gossip...
I got it from here. This is the Corporate Gossip Podcast. Intuit and TurboTax. Girlboss, Gaslight, Gatekeep.
Hey, this is producer Mike. If you want to binge all of season 4 right now and not have to wait for weekly drops, head over to our brand new Patreon, patreon.com/corporate gossip. All audio and video are up there right now for the entire season. Plus, not only can you binge the entire season, there'll be discussions with Adam and Becca about each episode. So head over to patreon.com/corporate gossip and sign up now. All right, let's get into the show.
Speed.
Welcome back to the Corporate Gossip Podcast. I'm your host, CPA scorned Becca Platsky. I'm here with my brother and my co-host,
Data analytics playboy, Adam Platsky.
Today we're talking taxes. All the corporate gossip behind TurboTax and Intuit. And ooh, baby, first line. Reagan once said, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem. Actually, it's funny. I have that tattooed right above my butt crack. And boy, oh boy, Intuit is the companyification of that quote. Intuit's low down, foul, cynical business practices will blow your cute little ironic dress socks right off your dang feet. And I'm going to say that Intuit, they own the tax filing company TurboTax, is the scammiest company we have ever covered on this podcast. We covered Enron on this podcast, you guys, because these companies, the other ones that we've covered, in my opinion, only really do scammy stuff when their backs are against the wall. As opposed to Intuit, where their entire business model depends on them having zero integrity and deceiving their customers at every turn. On the flip side, I don't want you to get so bummed out over this episode because there are some heroic reporters and government officials to celebrate at the end of this story, along with some good news, actually, that I think will be salve for the collective asshole that Intuit has ripped into all of us. Is that too much swearing? So that's going to pass? All right,
you're
great.
good.
We're going to try to swear less, guys, because it's good for YouTube. Shout out to Propublica. They're the ones who did the majority of the reporting and research on this topic. And I think most of the legislation that we're going to talk about would not have been possible without their efforts. So they're a great place to support.
Yeah, what was the genesis of this? Because last I remember, I guess it was a couple months ago, I had gotten some furious texts about Intuit and TurboTax, and then like a bunch of articles, and then you said, I'm going to do this outline, and then 2 hours later you said the outline's done, we're doing Intuit TurboTax. So tell me, where was your head at 2 months ago?
You know, I have to be completely honest with you guys, and this is a dirty secret. I don't do my own taxes. Never have. And this is even more embarrassing. You guys know the person who does my taxes. It's my dad. And so my dad and I were doing my taxes together. And I just thought, let me just like look into what's happening here. And I went in a gosh darn rabbit hole and came out absolutely furious. That was really the genesis of this.
God, that's so embarrassing that you don't do your own taxes.
Wait, you do your own taxes?
No, Dad does my taxes.
Are you ready to get into the gossip of it all?
Bring on the scam.
Corporate gossip number one is, not even in Ronald Reagan's wet dreams could he imagine a company as perfectly scammy as Intuit. So the main product we're going to be talking about today is TurboTax, which is a tax filing software owned since 1993 by a company called Intuit. Intuit also owns Credit Karma. They own MailChimp, QuickBooks, Mint, and a couple of other business software companies. And our focus is going to be on the TurboTax product, but we're going to be referring to the company Intuit because that's ultimately where the accountability lies. So Intuit was found in 1983 by Scott Cook and Tom Proulx, Proulx. Here are the two founders. I mean, this is so 1980s. You know what they should do? That, you know, those like old timey photos that you can take on like the boardwalk? They should do that for
business.
The first software that the company launched was called Quicken for DOS. It wasn't the first software company that helped people with their finances, but it was really slick and easy to use, and it became the leading personal finance software for years to come. If you go to the next slide, you'll see a screenshot of their first. Look at that ledger. This is the definition of slick software in 1983, which, to be honest, it actually is pretty good. It seems relatively easy to use. And now we're going to skip forward about 25 years because that's when CEO Brad Smith takes over in 2008. And we're going to spend a majority of this episode covering the next 15 years because this is when things really go off the rail. So meet Brad Smith. He's born in Canova, West Virginia. That's the town where the Marshall University plane went down. Do you guys remember that movie, We Are Marshall?
Mm-hmm. Oh, Matthew McConaughey.
That movie destroyed me when I watched it.
And Matthew Fox.
Who's Matthew Fox?
He was from Lost. That was his first big thing.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Yeah, he was one of the coaches, I think.
Yeah. Why did it destroy you?
If you guys don't know, basically this entire football team, it's based on a true story where an entire football team was taking, I think, a chartered plane to a game, and the whole plane went down. So basically this university lost.
Like right after taking off in the town, I think.
Yeah.
Of Marshall. Yeah,
and it was just obviously incredibly devastating and tragic, and the movie was equally devastating and tragic. So Brad's dad worked at Nestle for 26 years, and then he actually became mayor of their town. Brad went for a semester to the U.S. Military Academy in West Point, and then he returned to Marshall where he ended up graduating. He was actually the first person in his family to go to college, and his dad gave him a Marshall class ring for Christmas and then passed away of a heart attack 2 months later.
You could say that Brad Smith was the Don Jr. of Canova.
Yeah, I guess so.
The Don Jr.
But Marshall plays a pretty important role in his life, and you'll see how he kind of like ties that string together towards the end of his life. But anyway, he ended up working at Pepsi and then ADP, which is like payroll processing software, for 10 years. And then he becomes the CEO of Intuit at 44 years old, which I don't know, like 44 just seems so young to be a CEO of like one of these big companies. I feel like there should be an age, a lower age limit. But
Well, you'll see in the next photos why, because he drinks the blood of the youth.
that's right. There isn't much more about his childhood. We don't have any like family dynamics, but he does have one of those day in the life articles by Business Insider. And here's just a little treat. He wakes up at 5:30 to do P90X and watch CNBC. He drinks a protein shake, reads the Wall Street Journal, and then heads into work at 7:30.
Be original. Like, tell me what you're really doing.
Yeah.
What are you really doing? I wake up, I take a piss, I think I'm fat, but then I realize after pooping that I'm just full of poop.
That's so true.
And then I weigh myself.
Adam did a little extra corporate gossip deep dive for us, and he found Brad Smith's long lost twin.
Yeah, isn't that scary?
Go ahead, describe what we put up on the screen.
On the left is Brad Smith, and on the right is Mike Jeffries, former CEO of Abercrombie and Fitch. And I saw Brad Smith, and I instantly thought of Mike Jeffries. Mike Jeffries lives in my head rent free.
Do you want to do an episode
Daily.
on him?
I would love to do an episode on him. Mike Jeffries is the poster child of what can go wrong with fillers, Botox.
Oh my God, veneers.
Veneers.
I was just going to say, I mean, actually, I will say Brad Smith has great teeth. They don't appear to be veneers. I'm no expert, but Mike Jeffries is about Simon Cowell level of veneers.
They may not be brothers, but they're at least first cousins.
So the crazy thing about Brad Smith, which I wasn't expecting, is that even today, and you're going to find out a lot of scammy things about the company that he runs, but even today, his reputation is pretty good. Magazines like Fortune and Fast Company kind of washes balls about how he turned Intuit from a small software company with little focus to this booming software as a service that's also known as SaaS powerhouse. And there's a Fortune story called How Intuit Reinvents Itself, and that's from 2017. And if you didn't know any better, you'd read this profile by Fortune and you'd think that Brad Smith was a model leader. Here's some of the things that they know. He sends his performance reviews that he receives directly from the board, unedited, to the entire company. Then they get into how well the company is doing. They got $5.2 billion in revenue, up 36% from 5 years prior. In fact, at the time, Intuit's financial performance was in the 99th percentile of all publicly traded companies. And like, how'd they do it? According to Fortune, Intuit has done what every company today must learn to do, disrupting itself continuously, reinventing its products and its business model before any competitor can beat it to it. And they go on to talk about Intuit's creative management model, how they stay close to their customers, how leaders are transparent about their failures, and they're always disrupting. And what I'm about to tell you next will illustrate why it's so important to understand the context, because I bet you there are a lot of executives who read this article, printed it out or forwarded it to their teams and said, hey, we should make our company more like Intuit and we'll be successful. And I'm sure there are consultants who probably have this case study on a slide and they wax poetic about business transformation. But what they're not telling you, or maybe what they don't even know themselves, and shame on Fortune because this was public information at the time, is that Intuit's business success is not built upon good company culture and a relentless desire to reinvent. Intuit's accomplishments are in fact driven by a years-long covert campaign to kneecap the IRS, collude with other tax filing companies in what can honestly be considered borderline violation of antitrust law, and trick Americans into paying more than they need to file their taxes. And this isn't just regular old lobbying. This is Coke level shit. And if you're not familiar with that, go back and listen to our 2-part Coke episode and you'll know the depths of lobbying at that company. But when the IRS considered programs that would process tax returns automatically, basically the IRS would do your taxes for you without you even having to fill out a return, which is called return free. Intuit hired lobbyists to get community leaders to submit pre-written op-eds opposing the program. Those same lobbyists donated $26,000 to 2 congresspeople proposing return-free legislation. That's Eric Cantor and Zoe Lofgren, and they dropped the bill. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. And I'll note here that all these stories about Intuit are substantiated by both news outlets and the federal government themselves and the Department of Justice, but Intuit does deny any wrongdoing. Ready to get into the dirt?
I'm filthy, baby.
How many hot dogs have you had today?
I had 2 last night, and I think they're out of me. but I'm gonna have 2 tonight.
You're gonna refill
to sell it. Yeah, we're recording this on opening day, so I'm wearing a jersey and I'm eating hot dogs. Oh, by the way, did you see the guy who ate a Costco hot dog for a week for every meal, and he lost 5 pounds?
Are you gonna try that?
And he only spent $42.
That's great.
To feed himself for an entire week.
Oh, he only ate Costco hot dogs for a week.
And a drink, yeah.
How many hot dogs?
So 1 hot dog with every meal. So 3 hot dogs a day with a soft drink. And
of course he lost weight.
Yeah, calories in, calories out, man.
That's crazy.
No, I know, but a hot dog is not nutritious. I get it's not a ton
his blood pressure's
food.
probably through the roof, but his weight's down.
Yeah, I guess weight shouldn't be the indicator of health, but in my mind it is.
Anyway, let's move to corporate gossip number 2. Corporate gossip number 2 is Intuit and their lobbyists gaslight us all and say, be cool. Don't be all like uncool taxpayers. It's okay to have an overcomplicated tax system that we also have to pay for. So before we go any further, I have to explain something. The people responsible for setting tax rates and tax rules in the United States are Congress. And in the case of state taxes, it's going to be the state legislators. The IRS does not set any tax rates or tax laws. The IRS is a federal agency and they work under the Department of Treasury. They're tasked with collecting taxes. They don't make any rules. They don't have any say over what the tax rates actually are. So think about Congress as the grocery store manager. They're setting the prices, and the IRS is the cashier who's in charge of collecting revenue for the grocery store. And the other thing you need to know is that compared to other countries, the U.S. tax system is remarkably complicated. Americans spend 6.5 billion hours every year doing their taxes, or some Americans, and they still make mistakes. Today, the majority of taxpayers file online, but it wasn't always that way. In the late 90s, a good chunk of Americans were still filing their taxes on paper. And the government started to think like, hey, there's this new thing called the internet. Let's get more people filing their taxes there, and it would be easier and quicker for everybody. And before we go any further, I know a lot of people hate the IRS. They're really easy to hate. And the people with prominent voices in our country, specifically really rich people, also want you to hate them. But this episode is going to try to push back a little bit on that propaganda. This is a true story. Just last weekend, I was talking to a friend about this. He's a regular guy. He's a nurse. He's not like a millionaire or anything. And he said, it is in my best interest that the IRS is bad at their jobs. And I said, no, it's not. If you are a normal person, or if you're a rich person who cares about others, I'm talking to all 6 of you, it is so much better for you to have a fully funded and fully functional IRS, especially when we're really getting very close to a complete corporate dictatorship in this country. So for the rest of this episode, I want you to close your eyes and I want you to picture the IRS like the little Boy Scout in the movie Up, and you're the old man. He's just an earnest, misunderstood dweeb who wants to do the right thing. So stop being such a curmudgeon and give the IRS a chance. Okay, you ready to go back to the story?
Mm-hmm.
So according to Propublica, it was around the dawn of the internet age in 1998 when Intuit hired a man who would change the way the company interacted with regulators forever. And Mike, if you can take us to the next slide, his name is Bernie McKay. He was Intuit's new vice president of corporate affairs who became obsessed with stopping the government from encroaching on Intuit's business. By the way, at a tax conference he was at, I guess it was around this time that Star Wars came out, and they asked him, like, who do you most identify in the franchise? And he said, Darth Vader.
Where's the tax conference held?
It's got to be in, like, Palm Springs or something.
Let's see. Is there a name for the tax conference?
It just says a tax industry conference.
Tax conference. The National Tax Conference.
And where's that?
This year it is in D.C. at the Shoreham Hotel.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
McKay's efforts worked, and Congress overhauled the IRS next year, reflecting Intuit's lobbying. They had a bill that said the IRS, quote, should cooperate and encourage the private sector to increase electronic filing. And he ran the same play again in 2002 when the Bush administration proposed the IRS develop an easy, no-cost option for taxpayers to file their tax returns online. Republican lawmakers, supported by lobbyists, wrote to the IRS that there was no reason for the government to, quote-unquote, compete with the well-established private tax prep companies. Intuit had so much influence on Capitol Hill that some lawmakers were accusing the IRS of making secret plans to undercut the tax filing industry and told them that if they continued with their plan to develop a free online tax filing system, they'd get their funding cut. Can you imagine being a regular employee at the IRS and being told that if you do your job, which is to make taxes easier to file, which would lead to more revenue for the government, that you would be punished? You'd get your funding taken away. So the IRS is in a bind. Like, what do? Do they go forward with the plan and fail because they're not going to have the funding to do it well? Or do they fold and do what the Intuit mafia wanted them to do? Ultimately, they ended up compromising. If Intuit provided free services to taxpayers below a certain income threshold, then the IRS would promise not to develop their own system. And when people talk about oligarchy or corporatocracy, this is what they mean. You elect someone to advocate for you in DC, and then they are so corrupted by lobbyists that they end up advocating for a company over your interests as a constituent. And of course, the agreement was lopsided. The companies in what they called a free file alliance, as it was known, only had to offer free services to 10% of their customers, which they could tailor so it didn't cut into the base of their paying customers in the first place. And they only had to provide free federal return services. They could still charge for state tax returns or whatever other services they said that you needed. And on top of that, the IRS told them that they didn't even have to advertise free services on their own, on Intuit's website. They don't have to tell you that they do it for free. They could just put it on a subpage in the IRS's website.
So there's a lot to unpack there. What's interesting to me is that the IRS, I'm asking, didn't set up pop-up shops for filing. So like similar to what we see with private H&R Block do at a Walmart or a library or something like that. That didn't happen, right?
It's possible. This was in 2002, so I have no idea. I didn't find that.
Okay.
But either way, in my memory, being a kid, I remember being in Walmart and seeing an H&R Block pop up. I don't remember seeing one, sponsored by our state or city government. Because think about
where we are in 2002, right? An online service panders to a certain audience. So I read on iBiz that in 2002, 59% of households had at least one computer. And there were racial and ethnic issues with this. According to the Pew Research Center, African Americans and Latinx groups were less likely to be using the internet, right? So even this solution that provides free file still panders to an audience that is capable of using the internet and can get to the website easily and can find it.
Yeah.
People who are used to using the internet. And it sounds like this wasn't an easy tool to find the free file.
Even today, the free file, which is still provided by Intuit and TurboTax, it's clunky. It looks very outdated. It doesn't have that nice look and feel that Intuit has, which is on purpose. They want you to feel less confident with the tool. They want you to, and we'll get into it's called dark patterns that they use to make you not want to use this free service and make you use the paid service instead. You ready to move to corporate gossip number 3?
Yeah.
Corporate gossip number 3 is, I'm sorry, but the old free file can't come to the phone right now. Why? She's dead. So the IRS did have a very small win here. Even though they'd be working with their schoolyard bully, they'd at least achieve free returns for some people through the Free File Alliance. But the problem is, even though roughly 70% of Americans qualified for the free file program, to your point earlier, because of all the roadblocks that are in their way, using the internet, finding the service, only 2% of people actually used it. Most people had no idea it even existed. And that's because of years of budget cuts to the IRS. These cuts, by the way, mainly benefit the very wealthy and corporations, and that's a topic for another day. But the IRS effectively had zero budget to advertise these services. In the beginning, they had about $2 million a year, but that was quickly slashed to zero. And TurboTax, on the other hand, is spending $800 million annually on advertising, they had no hope. The government had no hope to compete against them. Here's you found an advertisement
Yeah, I
for
love an old
TurboTax.
advertisement for TurboTax.
Let me play it.
Doing your own taxes. Only the most brilliant financial minds had the confidence to attempt it until TurboTax. Now the math impaired can do it. The disorganized, the overworked, the worrywarts, even the procrastinators.
TurboTax gives millions of Americans the confidence to do their own taxes. It's easy, and its calculations are guaranteed accurate. TurboTax. Taxes made easy, taxes done right.
You know what's so messed up about this commercial is part of Intuit's lobbying efforts were actually to maintain a really complex tax system. So you'll notice in the advertisement, they're like, basically what they're trying to say is doing your taxes is so scary that normally only a professional genius would be able to do it. There's no way that you're going to be able to do it as a normal person. And that was on purpose.
Yeah,
Intuit
I mean, they have to create a value proposition.
But Intuit was lobbying to make sure that taxes continued to be as complicated as they are. Because when you have a really complicated system, that's how you guarantee a market for yourself. So there are lawmakers who are saying, we need to simplify this tax code. This is insane. And Intuit's being like, no, you need to keep it. If you make it simple, you're going to put us out of a job.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of so cynical that they're then using that to be like, we're the heroes in this situation because the tax system is so complicated. Isn't it awful? And it's like, you're also making it complicated. Are you ready for one of my favorite segments in this show called Liz Warren popping the fuck off?
Does Liz Warren fucking fuck?
What?
I don't know. I saw Serena Kerrigan say that.
We need a special sound for Liz popping off for a song. This is Liz popping off hour on the Corporate Gossip Podcast. Liz popping off. Liz popping off. So here's Senator Liz Warren from Massachusetts in a hearing talking about what's actually happening with the Free File Alliance and Intuit and TurboTax. So she says, let's call the so-called Free File Alliance what it is, a front for tax prep companies who use it as a gateway to sell expensive products no one would even need if we just made it easier for people to pay their taxes. In response to this is what the Free File Alliance said. They said, allowing the IRS to prep returns would create a tremendous and potentially harmful conflict of interest for the American people by enshrining the roles of tax preparer, tax collector, tax auditor, and tax enforcer in one entity. Like you give a shit about conflicts of interest. Spare me, please. Don't you think it's a conflict of interest that the company who benefits from a complex tax code also bribes lawmakers to make the tax code more complex? Do you not think that it's a harmful conflict of interest when your lobbyists in 2015 put language in a funding bill that made applying for the earned income tax credit more difficult by quadrupling the length of the form that taxpayers have to fill out to get it? You don't think it's a conflict of interest to benefit from legislation that requires poor people to pay for your services to help them understand how to qualify for one of America's best anti-poverty programs? And also to be effectively writing that same legislation? And don't even get me started on regulatory capture. Your guys have created a veritable feeder system of crooked administrators. Dave Williams was one of the IRS Free File program leaders and ended up going to work for Intuit. While he was at the IRS, he was apparently very commercially sensitive, aka he wanted to give the lobbyists what they wanted, and quote, he was particularly open to having sidebar conversations with key people where he could imagine himself landing someday. Stop gaslighting me, you turds. Knock it off.
Did you know the overall size of the tax preparation market is $14 billion a year? So that's inclusive of H&R Block, TurboTax, your tax preparer down the street, Tax Slayer, which that's a
What's
way better
Tax
name.
Slayer?
I think it's like TurboTax, but
Another
company. It's so interesting. And then it's growing at a 3.2% CAGR. And a CAGR is not what you think it is. It is a compounded annual growth rate.
So it's, I don't know, which CAGR is more fun? KEGGER or CAGR?
I don't know. My boss uses them interchangeably. Anyway, it's huge business, taxes. So it's when you look at the sheer size of it, and I didn't pay for the forecasted value 5 years from now, but I can guarantee you it's at least $2 billion more.
There's a lot of jobs, a lot of industries riding on the fact that taxes are complex to file in the U.S.
Yeah.
And there are people who are calling them out, by the way, professionals. So one was University of California Davis law professor Dennis Ventry. He was on the chair of the IRS Advisory Council, and he wrote an op-ed that was critical of the program. And Intuit bullied the shit out of him. There was emails that Propublica had published. They were revealed in FOIA requests, and they just like had a dedicated campaign making his life miserable. They really are. It's like it's the tax mafia. Mm-hmm. It's just very disturbing. So you ready for the next piece of corporate gossip? This is one of my favorite. This is insane. Corporate gossip number 4 is Intuit's lobbyist said, "For my next act, I will transform from a balding white lobbyist into a social justice warrior. And then I will tell you that free tax filing is racist." So here's an article, again, ProPublica. It says, TurboTax parent company's latest argument against free tax filing, it will harm black taxpayers. So this is by this is work from the administrative magician, Bernie McKay, that we heard about a couple pieces of corporate gossip ago. He was really just warming up during the Bush administration. And by the time Obama got into office, he'd really honed his craft. At this point, Intuit's lobbyists had amassed so much power and influence on Capitol Hill that even the most progressive legislators couldn't even put up a fight. In 2007, when Obama campaigned on the IRS creating a simple return system, McKay got lawmakers to pass an appropriations bill that says no funds can be used to provide any person a tax return. They even recruited normies to fight for them. McKay got op-eds written in The Hill, which is a DC newspaper that covers Congress, saying that we shouldn't have no-file taxes because doing one's taxes is a teachable moment that prompts us to review our financial circumstances.
That's pretty uninspired.
I could come up with so many better, why don't we just invest in financial literacy? You need people to be stressed out because it's a teachable moment. Give me a break. Then you've got other activists saying that no file or free file is just big spenders in Washington, D.C. who want to socialize all tax preparation in America. I love that people just throw out the word socialize as if to say, as soon as I say that, all conversation is completely done. Like, socialist, communist. The lobbyists even hired PR agencies to pose as students and send emails to community leaders, rabbis, presidents of the NAACP, filled with inaccuracies about return-free filing, and ask those community leaders to write an op-ed to protect their communities from the threat of return-free filing.
What the threat?
This is unreal. They are still pulling this shit as of last year. Here's an excerpt from another ProPublica piece that I referenced in the beginning. Articles published around this country repeats Intuit's assertion, sometimes almost word for word, that an IRS no-file program would hurt Black Americans. A researcher whose work is cited by Intuit says that the company is misstating her findings. So they basically took what she wrote and bastardized it.
Yeah, I've heard that at Intuit, you get a book on your first day, and it is the Koch lobbying book, and you learn your way. You read through it.
What would that be called?
Lobbying for idiots.
So you want to destroy America?
Destroying America. Destroying America. One representative at a time. These are blatant Koch lobbying practices. I mean, this is just like when they basically gave people free lunch to go to town halls and make a mess. I mean,
Brad Smith is one America's Cup away from being a Koch brother.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Brad
Smith is one visually accosting men's blouse away from being Wyatt Koch.
Thank you, Wyatt Koch.
Do you want to take a break?
Yeah, let's.
And then we'll workshop some more jokes, and then we'll come back.
Yeah.
With corporate gossip number 5, and we're back. Corporate gossip number 5 is, if you're following along in your MBA class, we have now reached the portion of the case study where the business engaged in downright fraud. So here's an ad that I pulled from TurboTax, and you might recognize this ad. Adam, if you saw it, what would you think that you could do with TurboTax?
Submit my taxes for free. Guaranteed, zero fed, zero state, zero to file. Easily and accurately file your simple, what is that word?
Tax returns for
free. See why it's free with a link.
So I don't know. This ad would make me think that I could file my taxes for free with TurboTax. Pretty black and white. So the reporters at Propublica thought, free. Seems too good to be true. Let's go through the process here. Well, when they took advantage of the free service, quote unquote, they were upcharged at every step, even if they did technically qualify for free services under the Free File Act. This Intuit page would not let them file, in fact, for free. At the end, they'd say, oh, actually, turns out you got to pay. Sorry. They also exposed that Intuit had created user interface tricks. If you're a UX design or if you're a designer, you might find this very interesting. It's called dark patterns that purposely confuse customers and make them end up paying for things that they didn't actually need to pay for. Intuit's UX designers, I'm sure at the direction of consultants, added fake delays to the system. So they'd add like a cartoon of a system scanning the tax return line by line for the sole purpose of making users nervous. There was no additional processing going on the back end. According to Propublica, quote, the animations emphasize that taxes are complicated, but also reassure users that the technical wizardry of TurboTax will protect them from mistakes. TurboTax also made the free version of the software harder to find by hiding the results on Google searches. The FTC ultimately found that TurboTax was engaged in deceptive advertising and in order to stop. Intuit responded by saying this decision is the result of a biased and broken system where the commission serves as accuser, judge, jury, and the appellate judge all in the same case. Is that like their only defense? Is conflict of interest? Like, give me a break. You guys are shameless. Regardless of what they claimed, a few months later, they did agree to settle, to pay $141 million to customers across the U.S. As part of a settlement with the Attorney General over similar complaints. So obviously settling isn't necessarily indicative of guilt, but they did settle. You know what's crazier is the next CEO of Intuit, his name is Sasan Guzari, who took the role in 2001, posted an internal video saying that making the free version of the software harder to find was, quote, part of Intuit's commitment to educating taxpayers.
He joined in 2021.
Yeah, that's what I said.
2001.
Oh, 2021. Apologies. Here's the video.
Our choice around search was intended to be the best interest of taxpayers so they were more fully informed about their options and could choose what they felt was best for them. But given the misinterpretation of our well-intended actions, we decided to remove the limitations we'd put in place.
I'm sorry, what? Like, this company's commitment to gaslighting at every step. This is an internal video, by the way, to their employees, because their employees were like, wow, I feel really uncomfortable that my job is to trick our customers.
Right.
And he's gaslighting the employees along with the customers. He's saying, hey, this is free. No, it's not. And it's weird that you would even think it was. You're acting crazy right now. At the end of Intuit, after it shows up and it's like, you're being really weird right now that you think you can get it for free. Like, that's really weird. I'm actually kind of creeped out. That's what the pop-up window said. The pop-up window says, have you ever thought of therapy? Like, or have you ever thought that you might be narcissistic?
Yes. That's right.
And then it takes you to BetterHelp. You want to hear something even more despicable? When the IRS started sending out stimulus checks, there was a lot of people who were eligible for the checks but couldn't receive them because they didn't make enough money to file taxes in the first place. So the IRS didn't have their information. And the IRS tried to spin up a website and get the word out to people who would qualify so they could get their checks without a fee. But we know what happened. On a shoestring budget, they couldn't really do much outreach. And would you look who showed up to save the day?
Surprise! I'm kidding.
You have to be effing kidding.
Intuit sends out a press release that says, in partnership with the IRS, TurboTax volunteered to create an innovative solution to help this group easily get their stimulus payment. And then they winked. Oh, gee, we've broken the curse. Finally, during these uncertain times, the good people at Intuit are set free to sprinkle $1,200 checks to all Americans with no strings attached. Oh, wait, what's that? Intuit pulled the same shit. They confused people into paying for services they didn't need. They collected more personal information than necessary, and they sold that information to third-party marketers. Here's Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon, who said it best. He says, this crisis has highlighted the consequences of a decade of IRS budget cuts. The IRS should be less dependent on private companies to distribute refund payments to millions of Americans. Over the long term, we need to ensure that the IRS has the resources to more quickly respond, especially in an economic downturn. Are you bummed out over this so far?
I'm super bummed.
I'm bummed. This is rough.
Bummed. Yeah, I am bummed because getting those $1,200 checks was like
a lifesaver for many.
For many, yeah. But also when you think about the groups that weren't being given money, people who maybe are paid in cash or whatever, right?
Yeah,
it's awful. And then to have their data sent to a third party and just really thinking of, okay, how can we turn this into a quick W?
It's crazy. And it's hard to tell exactly when Intuit's depraved and blatant campaign to give Americans a financial atomic wedgie was finally enough. But ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to tell you, it actually happened. Congress finally put some support behind the IRS to fend off their corporate hecklers. Which brings me to corporate gossip number 6. Listener, look at me in the eyes. Look at me in the eyes right now and tell me you ever thought you'd be getting absolutely hyped beyond measure when you found out that the IRS finally had enough money to roll out their own free tax preparation software. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. In the year 2023, the IRS announced a pilot for a no-cost direct file program for residents of 12 states, meeting certain criteria. This was the result of the Inflation Reduction Act in 2022. On Capitol Hill, Democrats are largely supportive of this, while Republicans say this would give the IRS even more power over taxpayers, to which I say, babes, you're telling on yourselves. You're telling on yourselves. A spokeswoman for Intuit named Tanya Mercado criticized the direct file project as a half-baked solution and a waste of taxpayer money. The direct file scheme is a solution in search of a problem, she said. Shut your pie hole, Tanya. Shut your pie hole, Tanya. Here's the current CEO of Intuit, Sasan. Here he's talking to Yahoo. You gotta. Did you hear this? Did you watch this?
To see as always. I think I read like 8 notes before we reported earnings I believe last week on how this free e-file system that the government may stand up may impact your business. But I mean, come on, can the government get a website right?
It's good to see you, Brian. Our perspective has been consistent in the last 10 plus years. First and foremost, free software already exists for all Americans. And this will yet be another, free tax software. We don't think it's a great use of taxpayer money, given the existence of free tax software. And so it's really not an event for us as a business. It's not material at all for us.
Can the government get a website right? Shut up.
Brian, it's good to see you again. Great question.
God, that interviewer is so smug. Obviously, the government is going to have a hard time coming up with a website.
How does it go?
That's what you sound like right now. If I was on that beat, shut up, Brian. God.
If it's so bad, why do you live here?
What?
That's what I mean. Like,
you don't like it, you can leave.
Yeah, the government's you can move. I mean, they're paying people to move
Brian?
to Italy.
Literally. Brian. One day, I'm going to be on stage with Brian. And I'm like,
You're gonna mock him?
Yeah.
You're gonna go full red eye on him.
I'd be like, shut up. Grow up, Brian. Get a life. It's true, Brian. The government, they're all stupid. Unlike me, my name is Cezanne. I'm a genius. You guys are going to struggle if you guys are like, I think anybody who's a libertarian listening to this podcast is probably driven off a cliff at this point. So I'm just going to push you over the edge. I feel like a lot of people don't realize how awesome the Inflation Reduction Act is. Its $80 billion investment in the IRS helped the organization do other awesome shit. Like they spun up a new program to audit companies' use and abuse of private jets.
So what does that mean for Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce?
Well, companies' use of private jets.
Private citizen.
So this would be like, for example, when Under Armour was flying Ken Plank around.
Okay.
Say if you're flying your CEO to Hawaii and you're writing it off as a business expense, they're looking into that.
I'm doing business. Get that thing done. What's Michael Scott? Get that thing done. Do that thing. Get over there and get that thing done.
Business.
Do those things.
I don't want to go crazy over here slobbering all over the IRS, but I'm a CPA. What do you guys expect? But it's like, for those that say private companies are more effective and efficient than the government, please listen to like 2 more episodes of this podcast. Even if they were more effective and efficient, would you rather the people in charge of the basic transactional infrastructure of this country be motivated by squeezing ancillary fees from every customer that even gives their website a sideways glance? Like, we already pay these guys at the IRS to do a job. Like, let them do it. Anyway, I'm really proud of the IRS. It ain't a pretty job, but they're doing it and they need a W.
Mm-hmm. Do they merch? How do we support?
I was thinking about making merch that just says "I heart the IRS" on a hat, but Adam is going to look up if you can support the IRS with merch. But I think just paying your taxes is a support enough.
I heart ass.
Oh, that's
cool.
cool.
Yeah, there's the Cafe Press, AliExpress, people are Etsy. You can get your IRS gear on.
So,
there's I heart the IRS shirt already. So
IRS before anything.
But first, IRS.
Taxes. Do not talk to me until I've had my IRS.
Do not talk to me until I paid my taxes.
Keep calm and IRS on.
Let's make paying taxes sexy again. Like, I want a PSYOP operation with
bully tax fraudsters.
How do we get Serena Garrigan to make taxes sexy again?
Do taxes fucking fuck?
Taxes fucking fuck.
Ooh, could we get Paris Hilton to get in a bikini and lean on a hot car and eat her taxes? Or was that Jessica Simpson?
I don't know.
I think it was both on the GoDaddy.
The
GoDaddy.
There was a Hardee's one.
Oh, the Hardee's. That's
I think that
right.
Oh yeah, no, I think that was what's her face.
Carmen Electra.
It was the other blonde.
Yeah.
Great corporate talk here.
Anyway.
Well, I think they should make a list of they should have a list of most delinquencies and then like an FBI's top 10.
Yeah.
So that we can, publicly shame.
We need to start canceling people for not paying their taxes.
Exactly. But also top 10, like these people are on it. Like early birds get the worm.
That's so true.
I think the IRS does a pretty good job of canceling people who don't pay their taxes. I think they got a pretty good grip on that.
But we need to socially cancel them.
Yeah.
It needs to be like, you nasty, you're a skank bitch.
Or I think we could have like different roads for those people.
What do you mean?
Like they have to drive because they don't.
You make a special slow lane.
Yeah.
So like there's all the way in the left you have HOV and on-time taxpayers.
On-time taxpayers.
And then all the way to the right, only behind an Amish person in a horse and buggy.
or that lane is made out of treadmill and it's going the opposite direction. You got to drive.
Airport treadmill going the
opposite way, and you have to drive on that if you haven't paid your taxes or if you are under suspicion of tax sheltering.
Yes.
I really like that. I think that would be really smart.
Or you get to drive in the regular road, but the IRS gets to come and take one piece from your car, and you don't know what it is until you're driving. They took a wheel. I got no seat, for crying out loud.
I
Just
love
a bunch
that.
of people, hands up because they can't see. That's so funny.
Or you're like they find out like who your high school bully was, and like they get to say like 4 mean things to you for every day you're late on your taxes.
Yeah.
You just show up and your high school bully's holding your wife's hand.
Yeah. Or the money goes directly to your high school bully who pays his taxes bank account.
Yeah.
He gets a cut.
But turns out that guy now is really good, donates to the community. He's really turned his life
And
around.
actually, you're the asshole.
Yeah. And he cries when he sees you because turns out you were the bully and have no recollection of it. That ever happened to anybody? No? Just me? All right.
Anyway, so Liz and Janet, that's Elizabeth Warren and Janet Yellen. If you guys need any advice, we're happy to consult for a small fee. But here they are, just a few weeks ago, actually, talking about the initial success of the Free File program.
TurboTax and other big tax prep companies advertise their services as free, then suck people in, and then pile on fees and charges. That's how they make money. Now, the IRS is starting small with a pilot that the Treasury Department requested to gather feedback from taxpayers. Direct File is live right now in 12 states, including Massachusetts, for about a third of taxpayers. Secretary Yellen, from what you can tell so far in the pilot, have taxpayers found Direct File accessible and easy to use?
Well, I think they have, and I think a good example would be the very first individual who used it was interviewed for an AP story.
Sort of patient zero, is that? Yeah.
And she was really thrilled. She said that she had saved $400, that it was easy to use, and it actually, she's somebody who I think doesn't like computations, and she found it gave her the confidence to be able to do her own taxes.
Are you ready for corporate gossip number 7?
Yeah.
All right. Corporate gossip number 7 is Intuit's death surge comes in the form of almost $300 million in tax credits. So this is just like a small little piece of gossip. But earlier this year, a few lawmakers, Bernie Sanders, Liz Warren, and Representative Katie Porter among them, sent a letter to Intuit asking what they had done with the federal research tax credits that they had claimed. $70 million in 2021, $94 million in 2022, and $106 million in 2023. This R&D tax credit has been around for a while, but the lawmakers are accusing the company of not using the money saved to develop patents, improve products, or hire engineers, like what they should be doing with the money, but instead to subsidize their own profit. They asked the company, give us a full accounting of the research expenses that you supposedly incurred to justify the credits and reduce your federal tax rate to an effective 10.5%, which is so low. It's lower than what the majority of Americans pay. And as of February 24, we still haven't gotten answers. Warren noted that the cost to provide free Direct File to most Americans would be covered by those tax breaks alone.
Wow, that's crazy.
Here's Intuit's response to that letter. Gaslight incoming. This letter is actually about Capitol Hill budget negotiations and desperation around a Direct File scheme that will cost taxpayers billions of dollars for something already free of charge and with potentially disastrous effects on the finances of millions of Americans. The company also defended its tax credits, saying that they cover research on AI and other technology that improves, quote unquote, personalized financial recommendations.
Personalized financial recommendations.
And in the word of Lisa Rinna, I would say, oh, you're so angry. Corporate gossip number 8 is Intuit tells us what they ultimately spend that money on, and you are going to scream. So here's a headline. Intuit cuts hundreds of jobs and spent at least $20 billion on a massive bet on AI. Today, the company is revealing its new virtual assistant.
Wait, so you're saying rather than getting a real CPA on the line, now I get...
Clippy.
Clippy.
I love Clippy.
Hey, what's the free filing? How do I get a free file? I'm sorry, I don't understand that request.
You will have to pay $5 to access this information. Would you like to subscribe?
Yeah, I want the IRS AI to act like a strip club. Oh, you want to sit down? It's $5. Oh, you wanted to go in that room? It's $20.
The first line in this article is wild. Here's the quote. When he was running Intuit's TurboTax and QuickBooks business, Sasan Gatsari had a startling realization. No matter how much work the company put into helping people calculate their own taxes, they didn't really want to do these things at all. He says, I realized that building out a platform for our customers to do the work was not actually the future. The future was, it's done for you, right? By the motherfucking government for free, you bozo. Not by a fucking chatbot. Yeah. My God. Talk about a solution in search of a problem. So everybody, if you see Sasan on the street, just don't do anything bad for him, but just be like, tell him to stop standing in the way of and putting his own profits and his own lifestyle ahead of us saving 6.5 billion hours a year, $23 billion a year. It's insane. And so stop it. You could just tell him, if you see him on the street, say, stop it.
Say, hey, what does AI stand for?
You could,
assholes at Intuit.
You could,
what are you having, coffee?
That's good.
You could probably find his coffee cup, go to a murder scene, and place it there.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Steal some DNA.
Steal DNA. It's not illegal to steal DNA.
Really?
I mean, you can pick up anyone's trash.
Okay.
Everyone just go to his place of business and just start digging through trash for no reason. And when they ask,
just freak him out.
Yeah. Just freak him out. Just do stuff to make him weird.
Just like dig through his trash.
I think you know what you should do.
Oh, you know what you should do? If he has a dog, you should completely ignore him and just go up to his dog, pet his dog, and then walk away.
Do you know what happened to me? I'm not even kidding you. Today, this morning, I had Sandy on a walk, and she was in a sweater because one person in this room gave her a grooming, and
right.
she became a little patchy. Anyway, this guy comes up to Sandy and goes, "Oh, nice, cute sweater." And I go, "Oh, thanks." And I swear to God, he looks at me as if to say, "I wasn't fucking talking to you."
Yeah, so that's a good burn.
Anyway, all right. I mean, yeah, don't do anything if you see him, but just know that if you see an article about this man and what a great leader he is, and Brad Smith and what a great leader he was, just have that context. Anyway, so you want to move into the takeaways in the future for Intuit.
Yeah.
So here's where everything stands. Brad Smith retired from Intuit in 2020, and now he's the president of Marshall University. Kind of poetic homecoming for him. He's also West Virginia's richest man, and he's also on the board of directors at Amazon. But here's the thing. Intuit is still a massive company. It's worth $184.7 billion. I think they'll be able to survive even if TurboTax stops being a going concern. But here's my question. Do you trust any of Intuit's products now? Like, was the fraud and deception limited to TurboTax, or is just this their way of business? In terms of how Intuit will make money in the future, I think we can look to a recent interview that Goodzari did with Time Magazine when they asked him how Intuit's customers are dealing with inflation concerns. And he just kind of comes out and says this. I could not believe it. He says, "We have a lot of data. So we see customer spending on our platform. We see bank account balances because small businesses connect to bank accounts. We actually see the number of employees, and we see worker hours paid and hours worked." So, I mean, between whatever AI models Intuit will create that are trained on this data and the value of the data sets themselves, which, like, I'm sure they wouldn't be hesitant to sell if they needed a quick buck.
Yeah, I mean, they could sell this to any one of any investment banks that would be wanting to see the macro trends on top of that. Even scarier thought is they probably have more granular data, right? Like, so every credit and debit that you have, they could probably dig into.
And granular data.
If you're
I'm just practicing for when I see Saison.
If you're using QuickBooks for your business, then they have like 360 coverage of you. I mean, this is really scary, right? And people will say, well, I'd rather have them have my data than the government, to which I say, the government isn't actively trying to profit off you and take advantage of you. Yeah, that alone, it would stop you from using.
It's really, that was just products. Honestly, we covered a lot of scary shit in this episode, but like that, to me, that quote is wild that he would actually come out and say that. And it was just buried in a random article I saw. The other thing that really bothers me is the fact that these guys can go on press tours and talk about how they're always reinventing and how they stay on top when they're just cheating and they're not called out of it. And you know what the funny thing, the irony about all of this is that although Reagan would absolutely love this company, he was actually in favor of free filing and automatic filing. So let's talk about the IRS. Well, again, thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act, they have increased their staffing to levels not seen in decades. Of course, the GOP is already trying to create a political boogeyman out of their increased budget.
President Biden's Inflation Reduction Act included more money for better customer service and more agents at the Internal Revenue Service. When Republicans took control of the U.S. House last year, they immediately tried to cut back on the additional agents, arguing they would go after the little guy. When I sat down with Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, who oversees the IRS, I asked her about this claim.
This is a tremendous misconception, and I'm really pleased to have an opportunity to address it.
Yellen says the IRS has been, quote, starved for resources for decades, and it shows.
And the consequence of that has been horrendous customer service, especially during the pandemic, and also very low levels of audits of wealthy individuals and complex partnerships and corporations.
Who on earth would benefit from the IRS having dogshit customer service and not enough resources to audit wealthy people? Could it be, I don't know, the richest man in West Virginia? And despite the GOP yammering on about austerity and a balanced budget and, oh, we can't afford social services because the government doesn't have enough money, give me a break. Studies have shown that every dollar spent enforcing U.S. tax laws yields $6 in collection. I ain't no Yale graduate, but I reckon that's a pretty solid return on investment. So when you think about the implications of who controls the House, this is one of them. This is why you have to vote in off-cycles elections. And if you come to this episode and you rightly feel major ick towards Intuit, I need you to know that their business depends on you being even more icked out by the IRS. But to be honest, guys, the IRS is kind of like that awkward but incredibly sweet guy that you never gave a chance to, and then 3 years later you're stuck with Intuit, who's the hot gym bro with rank breath who forgot your birthday again. And that's when you get a happy birthday text from the awkward guy who, hang on a second, did he glow up a little bit? You know, maybe we should give the IRS another chance. But yeah, you guys, if you see, on the other hand, if you see an IRS agent in the wild, I think you should give them, like, ask for consent and then give them a hug.
Yeah.
What do you think?
They're probably not going to consent to a hug, but just
maybe
say,
a handshake?
Yeah, something. Maybe probably not touching, just maybe like a, hey, I like what you guys are doing.
I really like your work. Yeah. I'm a huge fan.
Do you guys have any merch? Can I buy some?
If you're an IRS agent and you want something, you know, message us and tell us what you want people to do to you on the streets. And we'll relay the message.
This is just all bad ideas.
All right. So my biggest takeaway is, oh my God, Propublica. It's not even reporting, it's art what they've done. Like the amount of effort and energy they put forth to this and the changes that, like, Propublica is ultimately the reason why your life is about to be better in terms of taxes. And they are actually like a they're a free news service. They're never behind a paywall or anything, and they just operate based on donations. So I would highly suggest donating to them. I mean, we certainly do. So when you buy us a coffee, it goes to them too. But if you want to do that on your own, I would highly suggest it. And if you see a ProPublica reporter, then ask for consent and give them a hug.
Are you saying that you could support ProPublica by supporting us?
I'm just saying that we donate to Propublica.
Yeah, just give it to us. Just give it to us.
No, you do with your money what you want. And if you have already donated to a coffee, if you have already bought us a coffee, your money has also gone to Propublica. How about that? You had a good takeaway.
Yeah, I started looking into other tax filing services, free tax filing services. So if you don't live in New York, you may not have feelings about the nightlife mayor Eric Adams, but this kind of a little bit not changed my mind, but got my mind in moving in another direction.
Every lawmaker can do something good and something bad. It's okay. Yeah, even if you don't like a legislator or
I love what Eric Adams does for the nightlife of New York.
Even if you don't like a mayor, you can like some things that they do.
But at least in New York City, Mayor Adams has launched several initiatives for free tax prep for New Yorkers. They have services at food banks. They have pop-up offices at public city hospitals. I'm not sure if they have them at public libraries, but they should do that. And then they have a free service online at newyorkcity.gov. So if Intuit skeeves you out and you want to file your taxes on your own, you should look into your community and see what resources they have to offer. Or try the IRS free file system.
Yeah. And I mean, this episode will be coming out after tax day, but if you've filed an extension, hopefully this will be helpful to you. Or if for next year's taxes, if you want to get on the early list and then get into the fast lane, literally.
Yeah.
Hopefully. Do you think by next year they're going to implement HOV lanes for early taxpayers? Or do you think maybe 2026?
Yeah, you know what? Do you think people would pay their taxes faster if they only did it out to the Hamptons? Like rich people would pay taxes?
Oh, yeah.
Only out to the Hamptons. You can get out there in an hour.
Yeah.
But you got to pay your taxes early and correctly.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of another way to motivate rich people.
And you have to you can't have any helicopter traffic out to the Hamptons.
Oh, I got it. Only reservations to Via Carota if you're current on your taxes.
That's right.
I think that's actually a really good idea. And every time if you made a reservation and you show up to a reservation at Via Carota and you haven't paid your taxes, then they're going to keep your credit card and they're going to pick a middle class person who has paid their taxes and they get to come and eat on your credit card at Via Carota. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that was a great episode. That was fun. Light, easy breezy. If you want to support the podcast, you can do that at the link in our bio where you can buy us a coffee. If you want to support Propublica, you can do that at propublica.org. We are on YouTube now. Don't forget, guys, and it's super high quality video, so you can really see a lot of the details on our faces.
You can see how often I touch my face, which is very often.
And you can't see me because I have a face for radio, not for podcasts.
Actually, you guys don't know this, but Mike is actually one of the most. What did what's her face say about Sumner Redstone? Not a single wrinkle on his face. He has the most unique face I've ever seen, but you guys will never know. Oh, you can follow us on Instagram at Corporate Gossip. You can follow us on YouTube at Corporate Gossip or TikTok at Corporate Gossip. Don't forget to rate and review this podcast if you like it. If you don't like it, send us an email. We read every email. I don't always get a chance to respond to everyone, but I read every email. Becca at nighttoast.com or Adam at nighttoast.com. Do you even get emails?
I do. I get all the emails. Not many people email me.
But nobody really emails you directly.
I get CC'd on emails that come to you.
If you want to email Adam, feel free to. He has a lot more free time on his hands than I do. Do you feel like you have more free time than I do?
The last 2 days, I've had a lot of free time. Yeah, I'm waiting on a lot of follow-ups for work, so it's been like.
So why don't you give him a try?
Well, I might not be that free in the near term, but if I'm free, I will answer.
Anyway, thanks guys. That was a fun episode. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Adam. See you next week.